just a hack. It's just an absolute hack. And he gets his ass kicked by his teammates every week. It's just, it's terrible. It's just terrible.
Welcome back to another episode of the Believe in NFL Draft Prospects podcast. I'm Joe DeLeone, joined by Ryan Roberts. We're doing our last scouting report episode for summer scouting, and then eventually during the season, we'll probably pick things back up doing some more relevant scouting report episodes for the actual 2023 class. As that class starts to shape out a little bit, we get a better sense of how things will look come April. But now is projection time. The last pairing that we have is two guys that we didn't really talk about a lot on the safety ranking show, that being Jalen Catalon from Arkansas and Jammie Robinson from Florida State. And Ryan, I got to say, I think this is a very odd pairing for these two guys, specifically for the reasoning. I feel as though we could have talked about better safeties, especially considering the guys that we brought up on the ranking show. That's just my loose overview without getting too much into the weeds.
Who would you have rather talked about, Joe? Do you have names?
Who was the I'm blanking. Who's the Alabama kid?
Brian Branch?
So I would have loved to have watched Brian talked about Brian Branch, but didn't.
Well, I didn't, Joe. We did. I didn't. He's not like a crazy big name right now. He's just a guy that flashed while watching Jordan Battle, man. Like
that's fair.
He's like a find.
I'm not expressing issues with the pairings. Yeah, I'm expressing issues with the pairings that you picked. It's we're going with guys that are big name players that are recognizable recruits for a reason. Yep. But I'm saying it's funny after watching both these guys, and this might be one of the first shows, except for the Andrew Voorhees episode that we did, where I think we might bash on both of these guys a little bit.
Oh man, I guess you're telling me already how you feel about Jammie Robinson, but
yeah, I don't want to reveal too much.
Yeah, I mean, so if you heard the show that we talked about yesterday, you'll know that I'm a little down on Jalen Catalan, but we'll get into exactly why and what are the positives and negatives to each of these players. But I mean, again, Joe, we had to find a pairing that had a couple names and they're similar size profiles. I memean, Catalan's listed at 5'10", 199. Jammie Robinson's listed at 5'11", 203, and I will reveal shortly that Jammie Robinson is indeed not 5'11". That'll be a talking point in a couple minutes here.
All right, we're going to get to that in a second. Before we do, though, folks, I want to tell you about Bet Online. College football season starts up next weekend, and if you want to bet on those games instead of these goofy preseason games, which you can't really predict what's going to happen, you got to go to Bet Online because they have all of the odds that you need. They also have odds for Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information, from live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to join and make your first bet. Use promo code BELIEVE50 to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Joe, have you ever been targeted by anybody to be like a professional ad reader? Has that been a thing?
Shut the hell up.
I was complimenting you. Okay.
No, you're
right.
No. It is a known gag on this show, on the FCS show, that I bungle the hell out of ad reads. Don't act like that wasn't
fine. You did fine.
But I didn't bungle that one, but that was
exactly.
You know what can of worms you were opening.
I was not opening up a can of worms. I was trying to compliment my co-host, but instead, whatever.
No, this is Fighting Friday. We're fighting on Friday. Maybe we should start that as a thing. Speaking of which, let's fight about safeties, Ryan. Andrew Catalan from Arkansas. As we've established, I'm a little higher on Catalan than you are. I was willing to rank him, but I hadn't gotten to Branch. So I think if I had watched Branch, I would have probably pushed out Andrew Catalan potentially. But the guy's tiny. The guy is very, very compact. We lost Ryan. Ryan got up, which is awesome. He's listed at 5'11", though, which is where'd you just get? What was that?
I had to let my dog out of the room because she was starting to whine in the background. I'm sorry.
No, you're all good.
I kept my headphones on though, so I was listening to you still.
Oh, okay, good. Andrew Catalan, though, I brought this up on the ranking show. My man
Jalen Catalan. Who's Andrew Catalan? Jesus. All right. Sorry.
I think I might end up cutting around that.
Leave it in.
As we talked about on the ranking show, I'm higher on Jalen Catalon than you are. Now, Jalen Catalon listed at 5'11". My man's not 5'11".
He's listed at 5'10" on the roster, so he's definitely not 5'11".
He's 5'9" and change. Actually, not even. He's probably barely 5'9".
Yeah. He's probably like 5'9" and a quarter or something like that, an eighth. Like he's a shorter guy, man. What's that?
We don't have a verified height.
We do not have verified height. He's a redshirt junior on the roster, so he was not graded by NFS or Bless though. But he's a very compact little fella. But calling him a little fella is actually kind of ignorant on my part because my dude is dense, sir. He is well put together. At his height, he's just a little bit of a short guy. Which I know that's your brand, right? You like short kings or whatever you call them.
Short kings, yeah.
Yes,
The truest short king is Deuce Vaughn, short king Deuce Vaughn, but Catalan fits into that descriptor because my man is a little stumpy, as you pointed out. Is there any background on him that we can share? Or?
Yeah, he's from Mansfield, Texas. Was a 4-star recruit by Rivals, 247, and ESPN. So he was a pretty highly ranked kid. Number 20 in the nation at the safety position by Rivals, 29th overall in the state of Texas, according to 247 Sports. Also lettered in basketball and baseball at Mansfield Legacy High School, Joe. So he was a very accomplished overall athlete. When I look at kind of the background as far as when he finally got to Arkansas, I redshirted as a freshman, played a little bit, played in 4 games, maintained his redshirt. 2020, he had a breakout year. He had 99 total tackles, 3 interceptions, 4 pass breakups, and then he continued that momentum from a production perspective and had another pretty good season, although it was cut short due to injury, but still had 46 tackles in 6 games. So he was still a very productive player over the last 2 years. Has been an all SEC first teamer after his redshirt freshman year. And Joe, I know we love the COVID-19 implications here. So by my math, actually it's not math, but so he redshirted in 2019. 2020 was his redshirt freshman year, but 2020 was the free year, right? So last year he was technically a redshirt freshman again. So he's technically a redshirt sophomore eligibility, but he's a 4th-year player. So
by the way, have you seen the Minnesota? I think it was Minnesota. The way that the descriptors that they've had on the website for eligibility, it's like let me see if I can pull it up.
What they say, like super seniors and stuff like that, or
I think it might have been Jesse who posted it. I want to pull it up, and it's the they used to have a pretty good way of describing them, but it ended up being extremely convoluted. Okay, so here's how it's listed. Including 2022 season, years in college / at Minnesota, 6 out of 6. The remaining category is remaining eligibility entering 2022 season, 1 year. So like that's so convoluted because like the wording of remaining eligibility entering 2022 season, does that mean 2022 is his last year? Does that mean he has 1 year after 2022? I know what it's supposed to mean, but there's ambiguity to the definition. That has to be one of the worst descriptors that I've seen for eligibility. I'm sorry. That made me think of that because I guess Catalan falls under this umbrella of the goofy COVID eligibility.
You know what they should do? They should make this real simple, Joe. They should list what year they came out of high school. So there's 3 labels here. Ready? First label is the year they came out of high school. First year they're draft eligible. And then the last year that they could play college football. Keep it simple, man. Keep it simple.
I say that we either give too much information or no information. I say that we just don't tell anyone their eligibility. And then when the players just disappear, then it's like, oh, I guess he was done. Let's just guess.
You know who's the worst? It's like the high academic schools like Notre Dame and Stanford. They just list them what their
oh yeah, they don't even put the red shirt. Yeah,
it's not a football eligibility thing at all. Like they just put like if a kid is if in his 3rd year, he's a junior on the roster. His 4th year, he's a senior. So like there's some kids, I think like a couple of them are seniors technically, right? But like they're actually redshirt sophomores because of all the eligibility stuff. So a lot of fans will look at that and be like, oh, they're entering their last year. And it's like, nope, they're certainly not, man. They could play like 2 or 3 more years if they felt like it, which is pretty crazy.
Well, Catalan could either be 28 years old or he's 15. We have no idea. But regardless,
he was born in 2001. So we
I know
know he's yeah.
I'm just
I know,
making
you're making a joke.
a
I'm
joke.
sorry.
It's a
You're
bad joke.
it was a bad joke. Yeah, it was a bad joke.
Catalan, though, we don't need to beat around the bush with his tackling skills. The guy is a horrendous tackler. And I mentioned how ironic it is his tackling style because he's so small. He is so damn short and he's thick. So you would think a player like that would lunge at guys' feet and maybe miss that way. But he just runs it, dude, straight up like a pencil and tries to make tackles like that, which is one of the strangest tackling methods I've seen from a shorter defender. Those issues alone, Ryan, I think if you remove that, and you could coach up tackling. I always feel that tackling is one of those things that you can work on. In the NFL, it's not going to fly. If you put an emphasis on it, a guy's going to at least improve from horrible. He's a 0 right now. Maybe you can get him up to a 5. The coverage skills that Catalan brings to the table is what excited me enough to put him in my top 5. Like, for me, this is a guy who can easily recover over the top. He can play as a safety blanket for guys that if they get beat. There was a play in particular against Ole Miss where he almost made an interception catching up to a guy who was running a go route and made a play on the football. Those ball skills are evident and they're very, very good. I would argue, I think there's some shades of Tyrann Mathieu in his game, not necessarily a direct comp, but you can see those comparisons of being smaller safeties that have really strong ball skills and coverage skills. I'm betting on this guy because I really like what he does as a coverage player.
He is the most frustrating player I think I've watched so far, and that's probably slightly hyperbolic. But Joe, I mean, honestly, I'll be completely transparent. 2020 was much better film than 2021. I went into 2021 very excited about Jalen Catalon, man, because you're right. I mean, he misses a lot of tackles. He missed a lot of tackles last season. But the one thing I'll say about him is he has crazy hit power, man. Like there's some where I'm like, yeesh, he just levels dudes and like just tremendous hit power. But he doesn't wrap. And then there's some bad angles in the run game, and there's just some extreme frustration. I agree. I think that he's a good overall athlete. I think that he can make plays working from depth, but I think more than anything, his play style says I want to keep him a little closer to the line of scrimmage. And that is a frustrating thing to me. Yeah, because he's got that Energizer bunny, like wants to get involved he wants to be involved in the run game.
He just can't do it. He's just not good at it.
I think he can do it. I think that there's a technical issue from a tackling perspective. But like there's hit power, there's want to in the run game. Like I don't think that he's like he can't perform in that
so
area.
You don't want him playing over the top. You don't want him
not a ton.
I don't know, man. I was excited watching what he did covering deep and covering guys one-on-one. Like I thought that stuff was great.
I think you can get versatility out of him. I don't think he's like a true free safety type. Like I'm not leaving him all the way back on the roof. Like I want him moving around a little bit. But honestly, like he is just a frustrating player because there's 2 players that I've heard comps to, right? One that I made and Alex made one yesterday on the show. He said Antoine Winfield Jr. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense
build.
From a body type perspective and a versatility perspective. And I mean, he's well built too. Like he's a physically kind of impressive kid from a weight perspective as well for his smaller frame. But then the other player that I keep coming back to is Matt Elam. And it just reminds me so much of him. And the thing that scares me about Catalan is he's a little bit of a guesser. Like, and he's got good eyes, but then there's sometimes where I'm just like, the dude just wants to get involved so much that he kind of sacrifices integrity at times. It comes in a little bit out of control. And that's Matt Elam, man. Matt Elam at Florida was a joy to watch because he pummeled dudes and he was always around the football. Jalen Catalon's always around the football. And there's a tenacity to him. But my guy, I think, needs some chill pill at times, honestly. Like, I think he definitely needs to work from a technical perspective to be a consistent wrap-up tackler. but more than anything, he needs to play a little bit more in his own skin. Like he tried to do a little bit too much, I think, in 2021 before the injury. So
Yeah, he was also the injury too is also something that kind of bogs him down.
A little bit. I mean, Joe, like honestly, this kid is a very volatile player for me because I could see him being one of the top 5 safeties in the 2023 NFL draft. I think it's very possible. Or he could end up being a kid that has to go back to school just because he hasn't cleaned it up, right? Like there's just a lot of volatility. But I like the player. I just did not like the process in 2021. I felt like he had a really impressive 2020, and he did not improve upon it in 2021. There was just too many miscues, in my opinion, in last season.
With all that being said, like where would you willingly take him?
I wouldn't draft until day 3 right now.
Wow.
I wouldn't. Like when we get into the 4th round, I would start thinking about the gamble because that's what he is right now. I don't think that there's enough for me to feel that he's just going to come in and play a lot early on because it's just too inconsistent from last season. But I'll say this, the previous year, for off of 2020 film, I would have said day 2 player. Like I would have said that easily because I think he's that type of talent, but just last season was not great, man.
Based on me being a little higher on him, I would go mid to late day 2. I don't want to embark on that day 3 approach just because that also would mean Brandon Joseph for me is a day 3 prospect because I had him ranked number 5. And I don't think either of these guys necessarily are. They are a little bit of gambles. There are things that need to be fixed, especially the tackling for both of them. So like mid to late 2nd round, if you can hit on them, they're great players, but there are deficiencies that need to be cleaned up.
Yeah, he's a guy that is, again, volatility is the word that comes to mind with him. I think I could see him being one of the guys in this class, or I could see him being a guy that needs to go back to school for another year. Like I don't think there's much of an in between. I don't see him entering the draft if he is what he was last year. Like I just would really doubt that. But I want to love him, so I hope that he takes a massive step forward because he is talented. And I love the play style. I love it. Just he has to be more consistent to be a full-time NFL player right now.
Now, Jammie Robinson from Florida State.
J-Rob.
He's also small. You indicated that he is not his listed height. What do you have on him and for his background?
So NFS, we'll go there first. He actually had a pretty high grade, Joe, 5.7, which I believe is like a 3rd round grade. We'll get into that a little bit, but so he's listed at 5'11", 203 pounds. In the spring, he was verified by scouts at 5'10" and 5'8", so pretty close to 5'11", but a little lower than what is listed height. 197, and this is the tough part, Joe, because like I'm like 5'10" and 5'8", 197. That's fine, like cool, whatever. 29-inch arms, so he's got some. He's got some shorter T-Rex arms, man. Yeah, it's not great. 72.25-inch wingspan. So this is not a long dude. The height and the weight is fine. It's not a deterrent. It's not great, but it's not like something where I'm like, oh no, he can't play in the NFL because of his size. It's fine, but the length scares me. Like that is a very, very small wingspan and very small, short arms for a player. But he started out as a slightly under-recruited kid. He was at a Lees County High School in Georgia, Leesburg, Georgia. According to On3 Consensus, was the number 382 overall player and a 4-star in that ranking. But Joe, I'll tell you, On3 was not around then, so they didn't have a ranking on him. 247 ranked him as a 3-star, the number 35 safety in the country, unranked. Rivals ranked him as a 4-star, but he was an unranked 4-star in Rivals ranking. So he was outside of their 250. Number 24 safety in the country. ESPN similarly did not have him ranked. They had him as an unranked 4-star, the 39th overall safety. So two of the platforms did have him as 4 stars, but they were both unranked football players coming out of their full ranking. So goes to South Carolina. He played in that secondary in 2019. That was with J.C. Horn and actually, was that 2020? That was 2020.
It was 2020.
2020
J.C. and Cam Smith.
Yeah. Well, Cam Smith played a little bit, but they also had Israel McQuamu. So that was a very, very talent-laden secondary there. And he played safety nickel for South Carolina and was a pretty productive football player. But then he transfers to Florida State this past year. In his first year with Florida State, started 11 football games, was the team's leading tackler with 85 total tackles, 7 tackles for loss, which is a nice number. And he also had a team high 4 interceptions and 3 pass breakups. So he was an all ACC performer, first team all ACC, and was also a Phil Steele honorable mention All-American. So very productive player in his lone season at Florida State after coming over from South Carolina.
I didn't know he had all those accolades, and
Yep.
a little bit of a head scratcher for me why he's getting that much recognition. I mean, he's a good college player.
It's the box score, man. It's the box score. He's got a nice little box score there.
It is the box score. So he plays a lot in the slot now at Florida State too. Depends on who they're going up against, but this is a heavy coverage guy. They ask him to cover a lot, and for the amount of one-on-one instances as well as those like short zones they have him drop into, I think his coverage instincts are terrible. I don't think his coverage instincts are that great. I saw a lot of hesitation. The times that he got beat, I feel like the gears were turning, and then he made a decision, and then he got beat. Like there was one time where I watched him get cooked by A.T. Perry, where it was coupled by
in the slot, right?
In the slot.
Yeah,
He took too long to decide, and then he's also not a very good change of direction athlete. Like he's not that quick to change direction. So not only did it take him too long to decide, it also took him too long to shift gears and then make a play. And then he got cooked by A.T. Perry. I don't see, for a guy who at the next level is going to come in and probably play a similar role where a lot in the slot, a lot of coverage on receivers in the slot. You're hoping that guy's going to be a coverage eraser. And I started watching him, and he was doing a really good job. But then I started to watch him get cooked and get beat by all these different receivers, Miami receivers, the Wake Forest receivers that I watched in those 2 games. I just was not impressed whatsoever. I think the athleticism is average, and the decision-making is average to below average.
All right, so we see him a little differently, Joe, but not differently in the sense that the issues aren't there, okay? So I actually think he does have good instincts. I think he is not a great athlete. That is my issue with him. Like I saw him the same clip against A.T. Perry, where and shout out to A.T. Perry, man. My boy can run some routes for being a 6'4" wide receiver. But I think he got
by the way, I think he got stripped on the end. Jammie stripped him on the end of that play, unless I'm thinking of a different play. Yeah,
he may have. I'm trying to remember the exact play, but AT he's a very fluid player for his size. And I honestly think that in that play, I saw Jammie kind of redirect, like he wanted to redirect, but then I think his feet got caught in the mud a little bit because I don't think he's a very quick twitch athlete. I think that he has good eyes, and I think that he is pretty physical player. Like he has no issues tackling, and he's got a little bit of that stuff that you're talking about. Like I definitely did see a play. I can't remember if it was that exact one where he got a strip on one of the plays. I'm just like, okay, this guy's
got a motor.
He's got a motor. He's got habit for making plays. Like he forces turnovers. He had 4 interceptions. I think he forced 2 or 3 fumbles. So like he forces turnovers because he plays a very tenacious style. I don't think he's very athletic though. So when you're talking about him playing in the slot, like nah, man, nah. And that gets into trouble too because I'm like, okay, I just want him to kind of be like a mid-hole robber type player and just kind of use your instincts and fly around a little bit. But then the further you get away from the line of scrimmage, the more that length is going to start to hurt you because that's where the range aspect comes in. Like he could play in the slot with 29-inch arms because there's a lot of nickel corners that can do that. But usually nickel corners can make up for it because they're quick twitch.
Yeah.
I do not think Jammie Robinson's quick twitch, which is why I very much disagree with this NFS grade. I think he's a draftable football player. I know we're going to get into that like now, I guess, but he's definitely not a top 150 type of kid.
No
to me. Like,
shot.
This is like a 5th to 7th round type of player, in my opinion. But like, I think he'll be a good like core team special teamer, and he'll be a backup. I just don't think he's a great athlete. And I think he's small.
I completely agree. He doesn't check really any of the boxes to draft a guy early. He's going to be like a high character, high motor guy that you want on defense, help set the tone. But you're not drafting him to be a starter. This is a depth player. This is a guy who you mentioned, a core special teamer who's going to bust his ass on kickoff, on punt. And you're really drafting him. I wouldn't even draft him to be like a nickel player. I'd draft him to be like a dime player when you need an extra DB. And that's like the most optimistic outlook. I don't even know if I'm putting him on the field at all in any of my sub packages. There's too many deficiencies. Athletically is the big thing, but I just was not as keen on as high on the instincts, I think, as you are.
If he's a nickel player at the next level, it's going to have to be a zone heavy scheme. Like, you cannot put this kid in man to man and just be content with that. Because I mean, all due respect to AT Perry, I love AT. I'm like, yeah, top 5 wide receiver, like fantastic, really fluid for his size. But the fact of the matter is that he's still a 6'4" guy running routes.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not going to be the same.
Not
as
Jameson
like
Williams.
Right. It's not going to be a smaller guy running routes. And if you are getting stuck in the mud trying to change direction against AT Perry, there's going to be a lot of slots at the next level you're just not going to be able to change direction with. So, yeah, I don't think he's a nickel player. I think he's a kind of a what's the word? Something of I can't think of it. Like, he's a Swiss Army knife type player. I'm trying to think of a different terminology, but like, he's a Swiss Army knife, but he's not a perfect fit into any role, if that makes sense. So
he's a tweener.
He's yeah, sort of, but that wasn't the word I was looking for. I'll remember it later, and I'll apologize for being an idiot and blubbering for a couple of minutes there. But
that's all good.
He's a kid that I think needs to kind of play all over the place, but he needs to play all over the place because he doesn't fit anywhere perfectly. Like, that's where I see him. But that being said, he plays a tenacious style that I would call him a guy he's a glue guy on a roster. Like, he's gonna stick because he does a lot of things well enough, and he plays incredibly hard. He's going to play special teams, and he has leadership qualities. I just don't think he's a great athlete on the next level. I think he's he's a below average athlete, if we're being honest.
Yeah. All great points, and that's a good note to wrap us up on. We've got the big board coming next week. We'll probably try and do a mock draft as well. At Joe DeLeone, at Rise and Draft, at NFL Prospects Pod. We'll be back. Enjoy the rest of your week.